Miranda Lambert's story is often told in flashes of awards, heartbreak, and outlaw grit. But beneath the surface lies a slower, more complicated transformation. It begins in small-town Texas, where truth was not a slogan, but a risk that carried consequences. From a childhood shaped by moral conviction and financial collapse to a career built on unfiltered emotion, her journey reflects the tension between vulnerability and survival. What emerges is not just a country music star, but a woman forged by contradiction. Someone who learned early that honesty could destroy stability, yet still chose to make it her defining strength. Longview roots and hard lessons. Miranda Lambert was born in Longview, Texas, into a household where discipline and integrity shaped everyday life. Her parents worked as private investigators, navigating cases that often placed them in morally complex situations. One case, involving the protection of an abused woman, triggered retaliation that dismantled their financial security. The family lost their home and stability almost overnight. For young Miranda, the experience was formative. Doing the right thing did not guarantee safety. Instead, it could bring loss. This contradiction became the emotional foundation of her worldview, shaping both her resilience and her creative identity later in life. A childhood marked by scarcity. After the collapse of her parents' business, Miranda's childhood shifted into uncertainty. The family survived on limited resources, sometimes relying on hunted food and strict budgeting to get by. Though stability eventually returned in part, the emotional imprint of those years remained. Miranda learned early that security could vanish without warning and that resilience was not optional. Instead of sheltering her from hardship, her upbringing immersed her in it. This environment created a deep sensitivity to injustice and struggle, feelings that would later surface in her songwriting. Pain was not abstract. It was lived, remembered, and carried forward. Music as an escape route. Music entered Miranda's life, not as ambition, but as necessity. Her father's guitar playing introduced her to storytelling through song, while her mother's singing showed her that emotion could be carried in melody. When Miranda picked up a guitar herself, she did not aim for perfection. She aimed for expression. Anger, sadness, and frustration became her raw materials. Unlike traditional training, her development was emotional rather than technical. Music offered her a place where pain could be shaped into something powerful instead of destructive. It became the one space where her intensity was not only accepted, but meaningful. Texas honky-tonk apprenticeship. As a teenager, Miranda began performing in Texas dive bars and honky-tonks where audiences were unpredictable and conditions were far from glamorous. She played for small crowds, sometimes barely earning enough to cover expenses. The environments were rough, filled with noise, indifference, and occasional hostility. Yet these stages taught her endurance. Every performance demanded emotional exposure without guarantee of reward. Her parents often accompanied her, witnessing her transformation into a performer who channeled pain into presence. These early years did not offer recognition, but they refined her identity as an artist who refused to dilute her emotional truth. Rejection and persistence. Despite her growing experience, Miranda faced consistent rejection from the mainstream country industry. Labels dismissed her for being too raw, too unpolished, too unwilling to conform. Nashville, at the time, favored safer voices and more predictable images. Miranda's authenticity became a barrier rather than an asset. Even as she submitted demos and auditioned repeatedly, opportunities remained scarce. This period tested her confidence deeply. Doubt crept in, suggesting that perhaps talent alone was not enough. Yet she continued performing, driven less by optimism than by refusal to abandon the only form of expression that felt genuinely hers. The breakthrough moment. In 2003, Miranda auditioned for Nashville Star, a televised singing competition that offered national exposure. She did not win the competition, but her performances left a lasting impression. Her voice carried an intensity that separated her from more conventional contestants. One performance in particular captured attention, and shifted industry perception. Suddenly, labels that had once ignored her began reaching out. Epic Records eventually signed her, recognizing the distinctiveness she brought to country music. The breakthrough was not about polished perfection, but emotional force. For the first time, her authenticity became an advantage rather than an obstacle. Kerosene and artistic identity. Her debut album, Kerosene, released in 2005, introduced Miranda Lambert as a force within country music. The title track embodied defiance, heartbreak, and emotional volatility, resonating with audiences who recognized its honesty. Unlike traditional country narratives that soften pain, Miranda's music confronted it directly. The album established her identity as an artist unafraid of intensity. It was not just commercial success, but cultural disruption. She did not ask listeners to sympathize, she demanded they feel. This approach became her signature, defining her early career and setting the tone for everything that followed. Fame, marriage, and emotional cost. As her career ascended, Miranda's personal life became increasingly scrutinized. Her marriage, once seen as a country music ideal, eventually unraveled under the pressure of fame and distance. Public perception often clashed with private reality, creating a painful dissonance. Behind award show appearances and celebrated performances, emotional strain grew. Miranda later acknowledged coping mechanisms that reflected that internal struggle. The contrast between public strength and private fracture highlighted a recurring theme in her life. Intensity brings both success and isolation. The same emotional force that fueled her music also complicated her closest relationships. Evolution, beyond the fire. Over time, Miranda Lambert's artistry began to evolve. While she remained rooted in honesty and emotional depth, her work expanded beyond pure defiance. She explored themes of reflection, growth, and resilience rather than only destruction and heartbreak. This shift did not erase her earlier identity, but complicated it. The fire remained, but it became more controlled, more intentional. Her later career demonstrated that strength does not require constant volatility. Instead, it can exist in clarity and self-awareness. She became an artist capable of holding both pain and peace within the same narrative. Conclusion. Strength rewritten in song. Miranda Lambert's journey is not simply a rise to fame, but a study in emotional transformation. From a childhood marked by moral consequences to a career built on unfiltered truth, she embodies the paradox of vulnerability as power. Her music reflects not just heartbreak, but endurance, not just defiance, but growth. The same honesty that once felt like a burden became her greatest artistic asset. In her story, strength is not the absence of pain, but the ability to shape it into meaning. What remains is a legacy written in songs that refuse to hide from the truth.